If everybody will join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to start our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Good morning.
This portion of our meeting is dedicated to public comments. Every person has an opportunity to address the Winona County Board, 2 minutes per speaker with an allocated 10-minute total. So is there anyone wishing in the audience to speak to the county board about any topic? And then if you'd state your name and your address, please.
My name is Mike Schultz. I'm the St. Charles Fire Chief. I'm here today to support a emergency manager's position. The city of St. Charles has written a letter. The mayor has written a letter on behalf of the city and the emergency responders, and I'll just read a little bit from the letter. The letter is actually addressed to Chairman Pomeroy. So we're writing this letter after a city council meeting. It was brought to our attention that the Board of Commissioners will be considering a position of Winona County Emergency Management Director. Through the discussion of the department heads of the fire chief, the ambulance director, and the police chief, we feel that, or we would like to express our support for investing in a dedicated full-time emergency manager. Over the course of the past 10 years, we've seen the position move from a full-time position to a part-time position. In the same time, as a community, St. Charles, we've dealt with large events such as the flood of 2007, the North Star fire of 2009, along with tornadoes, snowstorms, etc. Also following those is the cleanup and the training for the next event. It was stated at the council meeting, the county's history, it's not a matter of if another event will happen, but when. The position of Emergency Management Director for Winona County helps not only to lead response efforts, but also to coordinate resources, training, conduct planning on a county-wide level, seek both county and city grant opportunities, and organize training events. We discussed the last county-wide training was in 1996, and we agree that we need more practice. The better we are prepared, the better we are. Ben Franklin once said, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. With that thought in mind, we recognize the weaknesses in our own system and we continue to take the necessary steps to invest ourselves. We appreciate the time and consideration of this matter and trust that the board will make the necessary investment to build a stronger, more resilient Winona County. So, thank you. Any questions for?
No, I think we all received a copy of your letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else wishing to address the county board?
Morning, board members. My name is Bob Bruno. I'm with Pickwick Fire and Rescue. I was sent here by our chief, Adam Zimmerman, to read a letter which I've already submitted to the board. What I'd like to do is add some additional information on this. Being involved in the fire department for 27 years, both on the West Coast and out here in Minnesota, I've seen many different roles with emergency services, first responders, emergency management. Emergency management roles are different across the country. Here in Winona County, I've had the unique experience to be working with not only with our fire department, but at the time, Michael Peterson, who had a dual role as a dispatch manager for the law enforcement center and as a emergency manager filled from a previous position many years ago. Mike did a hell of a job trying to balance two positions as one. The load that he took, as far as I'm concerned, was excessive as a part-time position. And the reason why is emergency management is not just a guy sitting behind his desk. He's involved in training countywide for all facets of emergency services, fire, first responders, Department of Health, and private organizations. I'm currently involved with the Winona County Emergency Management Coordination Committee. Some of you members are on that. That involves both public and private sectors. Emergency manager is not something that is work half a day and then go home. It's going to require full-time, if not more than full-time, to get us back on our feet in this county. Training is lacking countywide for emergency services. We have a train system that is carrying both volatile petroleum products. We have nuclear waste coming through this county, both on rail and by the highway system. We need somebody that's going to be on top of this and train our emergency responders, because when we have the next disaster, a part-time person will not be able to handle this type of position.
I guess that's the signal, Bob.
Never heard that.
I turned my phone off.
Yeah. It
Is that the
wasn't-
first time it's ever happened?
Yeah.
Is there any questions?
Not at this time,
Thank you very
but we
much.
will be discussing it later in the, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to introduce our dispatch supervisor.
Good morning.
Mike left us.
Don't hide behind the council.
Come on up.
I sort of heard a voice, yeah.
Mike came up, or Mike left, and Jennifer was recently promoted to dispatch supervisor. So I just want to introduce her to the board, Jennifer Lavala.
Good morning.
I'm shorter than everyone else here. So I started with Winona County about 5 years ago working as a dispatcher, and Mike gave me several wonderful opportunities to expand my knowledge in the dispatch field, which has led me here to this position. I'm very excited to have it. And if you ever need anything from me, feel free to contact me.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard. Welcome.
Hopefully we don't need you in a professional capacity. Want to meet that way. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is
Morning,
Dan
Dan.
Golds, and I see I've got 2 minutes. I had 5 minutes prepared, but I'll cut it down to 2. I've been a volunteer for Winona County Emergency Management since 1978. And as you are aware, emergency response, even on a small scale, doesn't just happen. It takes a lot of education, planning, training, and more training. By the time emergency management is called in to respond, it's a very major incident. It may involve dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of potential victims, as was the case in Winona County during the flooding situation in 2007, where nearly everybody in the county was affected in some way or another. Emergency management also requires getting a bunch of different organizations to work together, which is no easy task. And that also takes planning and training. And putting together a training exercise is very time consuming. Requires sometimes months to get the various agencies to work together to decide on a scenario, to decide on the proper timing, to utilize the training budgets in a judicious manner so that everybody benefits from it. And we haven't had a training exercise in Winona County for some time, simply because when Mike Peterson was part-time or half-time, he didn't have the time to put it together. I just want to finish with one thing here. Yesterday, the Washington Post notes that Hurricane Harvey, Irma, Maria, combined with the devastating western wildfires and other natural disasters, created the most expensive year on record. And that amount raises concerns about the future disasters, as scientists fear climate change could cause more extreme weather conditions and more damage in the future. Obviously, we should be prepared for that, and a full-time emergency manager, someone whose entire attention is focused on this issue rather than somebody who's minding another couple things, is required. As the Washington Post states, it will cost more if we do not prepare, and I suspect that's true for Winona County also. Thank you for letting me address the board.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? All right, Thank you very much for the public comments. Moving on the agenda, approval of the county board meeting minutes from January 2nd.
I would move to approve.
Second. Motion made by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Jacob to approve the meeting minutes from January 2nd. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved. Consent comments and approval of the agenda. Anything, Mr. Fritz? Commissioner Kavesi?
I'd like to make some comments on consent business item number 5.2.
Just comments? Or do you want to pull it for
I'll pull it for discussion.
discussion? So 5.2 now becomes,
701.
well, no, it'd have to be 6, general business. 601.
And I have an announcement and an information item at the end of the meeting.
Announcement. Commissioner Pomeroy? No. Commissioner Olson? Commissioner Jacob? Attorney Sonneman? No? Okay. I do have one announcement at the end. All right. With that, I
To
would,
approve the agenda as amended. Second.
motion made by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the amended agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved. Mr. Fritz, if you'd read the consent business for the record.
Okay, I will do that. Consent business committee recommendations. 5.1, approve a conditional use permit for Mish Properties and Winona Solar 1 LLC to allow a community solar garden. 5.2 has been pulled. 5.3, approve authorization of financial reports. 5.4, approve resolution revoking westerly portion of County Road 112. Department recommendations. 5.5, accept certificate of performance and authorize final payment CP 85 1706 115. 5.6, accept certificate of performance and authorize final payment SAP 085 618 010. 5.7, appoint Winona County Regional Authority, Railroad Authority Board of Commissioners. 5.8, approve resolution and agreement 1030085 with MnDOT for federal funds. 5.9, authorize disposal of excess furniture and equipment. 5.10, confirm payment disbursements. And 5.11, approve OpenGov multi-year agreement for financial budgeting, reporting, and performance measures. And I believe that concludes the consent agenda.
Entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Jacob to approve the consent items. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Consent items approved. General business, it would be 5.2, which was the conditional use permit, page 35 of our agenda. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, the issue that I'm concerned about is the one of the conditions that was added at the meeting. And I appreciate that at the meeting there was a lengthy discussion about stray voltage and the effects of that on neighboring properties and feedlots particularly. There was extensive discussion. I do appreciate that. My concern is specifically the additional condition that's set out on page 39. It's number 8A. Number 8 actually deals with how we deal with stray voltage. And currently, we provide testing, or we ask the applicant to provide testing before to do a baseline, and then after the operation comes online to do a comparison. And if there's any differences, it can be traced back through the system to see if it's the solar array or the new power that's causing this, or if it's something in some of the original setup. And then we ask for periodic testing, and that's the way it stands. So in this discussion, we had a neighbor come forward, and she was very concerned because of her proximity to the substation. And I think the Planning Commission did an excellent job of discussing this with the information they had on hand. I do feel that this particular Part A sets up some rigorous testing protocols, asking for 30 continuous days of testing prior to the operation coming online, which sets your baseline. So it meets that part of the original statement. And then asking for 30 days of continuous testing, which after the operation comes online, which also meets the guidelines under the original statement. However, the state guidelines actually provide for testing of 24 hours rather than the 30 days. And that's set by the Public Utilities Commission, and it has, much background in scientific research. So I'm just concerned that we're setting a precedent. Obviously, people were concerned about this neighbor and her proximity, but in the research, there actually is research that's been available that shows that proximity to a substation really has no relationship to a stray voltage issue, that there are many other areas that do have relationship, and the state has said that this 24-hour testing is sufficient to uncover those issues. So I don't want to change it. I just want to make note that I'm concerned about setting a precedent. This statement goes above and beyond what the state recommends. And I would rather follow state guidelines rather than be in a position where at the meeting people are reinventing the electrical code. So that's my concern. I think it will be taken care of as we go further into this issue of solar gardens, because I know we are in the midst, or we're in some stage of developing our own ordinance. So I think at that stage that these kind of concerns can be handled. So that was my issue. I think the Planning Commission did an excellent job with the information they had on hand, but I was concerned that it's setting a precedent.
Okay, entertain a motion to either approve or,
Well, excuse me. Maybe if I can just make one note as well, given the subject that you're talking about, Marie. I noticed on the solar project prior to this one in this agenda, there are differences between that condition. The condition under the Solar 1 LLC addresses the whole subject a little differently. And I'm kind of wondering if they should be consistent.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so we had that discussion at the Planning Commission. And the concerns with this particular application is that there's a substation right there. And not only is there this solar facility, but there's the second solar facility that goes into that substation, and there's the two wind towers, all in a very close proximity. That power all goes to the substation that is just right on the.
It's adjacent.
It's within hundreds of feet.
The issues of proximity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we did have, there's dairies on both sides of both of these properties, and they both have contacted me, both at Planning Commission level and this level. Yesterday I had contact from adjacent property owner to this property. The Planning Commission felt that we have the authority and duty to treat each application individually. There's unique circumstances with proximity and the number of electrical generating supplies close to this property that this made sense to put this. And furthermore, a lot of negotiation during the meeting between the applicant, the concerned party, and the solar company. They're all in agreement on this. So there's a lot of work that's went into this, and I would support it just as it's presented.
Okay. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with any of that, and I listened carefully to the discussion on the tape. And the applicant was more than willing to meet the needs of these neighbors. Both of these operations are 1 megawatt, and they are in close proximity. But I would just encourage, particularly as we go forward on the solar garden ordinance discussion. There's a Minnesota stray voltage guide that actually has a lot of basic information. It's actually readable, because electricity obviously is not my thing, but I could understand it, and it actually pointed me in the direction of some further research, particularly some research done in Wisconsin with 1,000 dairy feedlots, where they specifically looked at the issue of proximity of substations, and they found no relationship. So it's just, I know the Planning Commission dealt with the information they had on hand, and but I was concerned about setting a precedent. So I think it will be taken care of in the solar ordinance discussions, and I look forward to those discussions coming on.
I'll move to approve item 5.2 as is written.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the conditional use permit item 5.2. Any further discussion? Just one comment. It's come up and not related to solar, but in some other conditional use permits is that whole accumulative effect. And it sounds like if we're getting a lot concentrated in one area, that does change, so that needs to be addressed in any zoning ordinance changes and everything. So, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved. Thank you for the discussion. Moving on to 6.1, conduct a public hearing regarding proposed changes to the Winona County zoning ordinance. Ms. Qualley, can you address that in a nutshell?
Madam Chairman, thank you. The proposed changes to the Winona County zoning ordinance are Chapter 4.2, definition of a minor modification of feedlots, Chapter 5.4, 5.41, 5.4.2, Chapter 5.63, Chapter 5.10, 2.3.4, Chapter 8.42 and 8.46, and Chapter 10.7.8. These chapter map modifications of the Winona County zoning code were part of a group of recommended zoning changes or things to look at by the Planning and Environmental Services staff, and have been vetted through the thorough process and public hearings of the Planning Commission. They came before this board just preliminarily at the last meeting. This is the first public hearing on these proposed changes to the zoning ordinance. I can certainly entertain any questions. You have both a hard copy and a red line copy.
Just for clarification, the process is only one public hearing at this level required to make changes, or is there
We had
some?
a public hearing at the Planning Commission.
You had one at the planning, right, and this is the second one. So does that meet all the statutory requirements of changes?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So,
So you need to open the public
public
hearing.
hearing, right.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Pomeroy to open the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak to any of these proposed changes? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? I do have a question maybe for Commissioner Jacob. Was there any, they were vetted by the Planning Commission. Were there any major concerns about any of these changes?
No, I think we should close the public hearing and then have our discussion.
Okay, we can
So I'll
do
move
that.
to close the public hearing.
All right, motion to close the public hearing made by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Pomeroy. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the public hearing is closed. So then, my question.
Yeah, a lot of this is just formality. There was no concern within, it wasn't political. These are things that make sense both to the Planning Commission, to the Planning Department. Wasn't controversial. There was, I don't think we had anyone speak at that public hearing. And there's been a thorough process that this has gone through, and I think our Planning Commission, Planning Department have done their due diligence. It's easy for me to support the work that's been done here. So.
Any other questions? I would have one question for Ms. Qualley. So the public knows that we do change our rules and regulations periodically. So is there this ongoing list of, we did have a list, and I'm assuming there is an ongoing list of things that people see that maybe need change or modification. So have we completed that list, or is that ongoing?
Madam Chairman, that list is not quite complete for 2017 from the board directive and the directives from the Planning Commission for Planning and Environmental Services staff. There still remains the question of interim use permits, which most counties have now adopted, which counties are allowed to have as another option to the CUP process, as well as the solar ordinance, which staff has prepared a draft, and a working group is going to, through a meeting in January, review, and then that will be brought forward to the Planning Commission directly, probably at the February meeting. So we are slightly behind in the 2017 list, and we presume that we will be reviewing a list such as nuisance ordinance that we get frequent phone calls on, that Planning and Environmental Services staff could bring before the board, and the board itself has, I'm sure, an ongoing list of things that they may think need tweaking as well.
Okay. So a member of the public, if they have an issue with some part of our ordinance, there is a process for them to have that addressed.
Any person that wishes to have something changed in the zoning ordinance, there's an application fee of $900 that is due if somebody wants to pick apart the zoning ordinance individually. And that would be like a single item issue kind of thing that wasn't flagged by the board or by a series of phone calls that seem to indicate that either greater stringency or something is missing from the zoning code, or that other counties through MCPSA and through the AMC that have been identified by other counties as an issue. That's how we would generally approach it.
Okay. Or they can work through their local elected and
Always.
forego the $900. Okay. Entertain a motion then to accept these proposed changes to the Winona County zoning ordinance?
Next meeting.
Yeah, that goes to the next meeting.
Okay, so we need to put it as a placeholder. You're right, because
Yeah,
the
you had to
public
conduct
hearing.
the public hearing that you
do
did
it
after.
the next meeting. So there still is an opportunity if.
Technically,
any-
yeah.
Okay, so it'll go on the agenda for
Yeah.
next meeting in January. All right, thank you. Moving on to approve grant 6.2, approve grant application to Minnesota Department of Ag for assistance to county landowners to eradicate targeted terrestrial invasive species. Ms. Morris.
Yes,
Good morning.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, good morning. At the previous legislative session, it was decided that the state would like to invest about $300,000, just a one-time appropriation, to see what new approaches, ideas could be developed and tested out to get a better handle on the issue of invasive species. So they are releasing, they're requesting grant applications of a maximum of $30,000 to come forward with ideas. And we wanted to take a shot, maybe our best shot, at trying to engage our county residents, landowners, and volunteers to try to get some measure of control of the Oriental bittersweet problem that we have here, which is the worst in the state. The state has been working with Green Corps programs to bring those folks down here to do some eradication, and that's been helpful, but we've got many, many hundreds of acres, and so we pulled together some ideas. The preponderance of our application is about $22,000 would be to hire an intern to actually be on the ground full-time, working with landowners and volunteers, and basically building capacity from with our residents to figure out how to do this effectively. And seems like a good shot. If they like our idea, I think we'll be. You'll hear a lot more about it, because our intention is to engage the community broadly. And we have more than 750 hours of volunteer volunteer time committed already from county residents. So those people will backstop the work of the intern, so people will be able to work as teams out in the field.
Any questions for Ms. Morris?
No, and
Commissioner,
yeah, so
Commissioner
we-
Jacob?
Yeah, we've discussed this at Parks and Environmental Committee. I think the application, I went through it, it looks thorough, supported at Parks and Environmental. There'll be some cooperation maybe with Soil and Water on this, or?
Yes, actually, we'll work with them for those areas that we can't manage as volunteers that would be using hand tools to cut and then treat the stumps. We'll be working with Soil and Water to use some cooperative weed management monies to go in if we need to use something like a forest mower if the infestation is really bad, which we've done in the past. So, yeah, we'll be working with them. They don't have a lot of time to commit. I talked to Daryl. He can't commit hours to doing the work on the ground, but we'll work with them and through them as we can.
Commissioner, oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think I've been one of those volunteers with some of those 750 hours. And as a master gardener, I know that we are ground zero with particularly the Oriental bittersweet, and we don't really want anything else to get a start either. So I appreciate the efforts to put this together and support this grant application.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll move approval then of item 6.2 to approve the grant application.
Second?
Motion made by Commissioner Jacob and seconded by Commissioner Pomeroy to approve the grant application for the Eradicating Target Terrestrial Invasive Species. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Approved. When we organize the party to go out and cut that, I would highly send a personalized invitation to our local legislators to join in our efforts.
Learn how to do it themselves.
Well, when we did that little tour a year ago now, I mean, it was eye-opening because they didn't realize what the degree of, it looks like brush and it kind of looks pretty when you drive by and such, so it doesn't look like it's,
Then it takes over,
yeah, then it takes over. So, we'll send them a hand.
And we hope to have 14 work days organized, so over the period of April through October, you'll hear about it, and do feel free to pitch in.
Okay, yes. All right. Thank you, Ann. Moving on, 6.3, page 122, discuss and appoint citizen advisory committee volunteers. We went through our appointments back in December, and the only one that is remaining is, we had a new application under extension. Mr. Luke Miller, who has been an active member, resubmitted. So I would entertain a motion to reappoint Mr. Miller.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to reappoint Luke Miller to the Extension Committee. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, Luke Miller is on Extension. The Planning Commission is the open one. And
There's one under Parks and
There's an
Parks.
addition under Parks. We had an addition at John Stansfield.
It's a new application.
Oh, okay, I guess I don't see it on the general sheet.
It's an
It was
addition.
on the
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 amended?
amended request for county board action.
All right,
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. Yes, no, I've got it. Okay, all right, so we have Mr. John Stansfield?
Yes.
Okay, as an applicant for the Parks and Environment. I would entertain a motion to appoint.
So moved?
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Pomeroy, second by Commissioner Jacob to appoint John Stansfield to our Park and Environment Committee. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved.
And then just along those
Open.
lines, both of those two committees, if we'll still be advertising for those, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the intention, is to continue to advertise those vacancies.
All right.
Okay.
So to be clear then, extension, according to the updated extension, there's still two vacancies or
Well,
one?
there were two, you filled one. So there'll be
there-
one.
One vacancy,
Parks and Environment, there are three, but you filled one.
so there's two.
So there's two left there, and then the watershed, there's one vacancy.
Okay, so anybody out in the audience that has a burning passion for any of those things, just fill out our application and check with county staff, and we can move forward with that. So the one that is open and the one that I've done a lot of homework on is the Planning Commission member. And it's great that we had more than one applicant and very qualified applicants. But it's no secret my passion for animal agriculture and the amount of work that the Planning Commission does in granting conditional use permits for animal agricultural operations. And we want to appoint the best, maybe the most experienced, the one that has working knowledge, in my opinion, boots on the ground, follows the rules, knows the rules, and works within the rules. So I am, with that, and checking with staff, citizens, constituents, and a number of people, I'm going to appoint Mark Clark. He meets those criteria. He is an animal agriculturist. He's shown great leadership. He is a township officer, so he knows zoning from the perspective of a township. He was a member of the comp plan committee, so he has gone through that process and learned a lot from that. He has applied multiple years. I always appreciate somebody that takes the time to fill out our lengthy application, and he has applied multiple years. He is engaged. He just, after a conversation, he just attended a manure management workshop that I think was held down in Rushford. So he wants to continue to improve in what we do and how we do it. And so with that, I am making the appointment of Mark Clark. So that takes care of our committees other than the openings that we have. And we will, I anticipate hearing back from the Board of Adjustment once they meet. And Ms. Qualley, is the Board of Adjustment meeting in January?
Yes.
Okay, so they will be meeting and they'll be making their recommendation to the Planning Commission spot. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to 6.4, receive updated on energy savings grant project. Ann?
Yes, thank you. Well over a year, almost 2 years ago, the county applied and received a grant from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency working on some energy conservation, water conservation work. And so we have been working over the last year and a half, 2 years, to improve our processes. And so I wanted to give you an update and thought that I'd like to invite one of our primary partners to join me in actually giving the presentation. And so I wanted to invite Pam Newell from Xcel Energy to just give us the update. They've been great to work with, so welcome, Pam.
Thanks, Ann.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, we did over there.
We did.
Yeah,
And push what?
I think this maybe.
Good morning, and Madam Chairman and County Board, and I never said those words before. I appreciate this opportunity, and I'm excited to be here to talk about this project, and I should say these projects, because what we've embarked on here is, as the first slide said, the first slide in your packet, creating an energy efficient future. So for all of Winona County. Part of the basis, and I guess this is our Xcel Energy plug, part of the basis is a program that Xcel Energy offers across the states of Minnesota and Colorado called Partners in Energy. And with that, we dedicate resources to specific communities or entities to help them with energy efficiency, with planning and implementation so that they can help to achieve their energy efficiency goals. So with that program, we created we began the plan development process for Partners in Energy in February of 17. Pictured there is our energy part, at least part of our energy action team. And that group met 4 times over 5 months to work to identify, prioritize goals and areas that we wanted to work on. So you'll see that there's representation there from a number of organizations, Winona County, City of Winona, Xcel Energy, CEE, which is one of our partners in this program delivery, CERTS, and then the general public, as interested people came forward to participate in this energy action planning. Okay. But that was not really the beginning of the efforts. So what I wanted to do, part of what I really wanted to do today was highlight the role of the county in bringing these projects to light. So it started with, I mean, we're calling a starting point here, Sustain Winona, which was formed in 2007. And you see the members there that are included in that enterprise. And I know that Ann, if you were the initial organizer of that, you were one of the organizers. And so that group, part of their work, they got together, got and received a grant in 2016 to support the work of what's called Next Step Partners. And that group has significantly impacted the ability of Xcel Energy to come in to the city and the county and provide energy auditing services for our residential customers. And it gets a little bit confusing, and not confusing necessarily, but with all of these efforts are coming together, it's a very classic example of collaboration and the better efforts and the better results that we get because of that collaboration, the synergy that results. So the Next Step Partners, funded by the MPCA, a grant written by Sustain Winona, and supported by the Jefferson Center, they had some goals to increase energy audits. And so as part of that, we got together with Sustain Winona, CERTS, SEMCAC, and Xcel Energy because to achieve 30 energy audits for low-income customers. That's where it started. That was the goal. So we were able to work together to bring the cost down to both the customers and the grant to zero and achieve those 30 audits. And in doing so, identify these processes so that we could take that model and move it on to larger efforts. Which to date have resulted in 100, I'm going to skip the first bullet for now, but we went from a goal of 30 to completing 197 low-income audits in the city and the county to save almost 130,000 kilowatt hours and 13,000 therms just by going in to customers' homes and replacing things like LED bulbs or replacing incandescents with LEDs, providing shower heads and faucet aerators, water heater blankets, energy conservation measures that are provided to these customers free of charge. In addition, having the auditor go into their home, help identify and talk with them about ways that they could improve the efficiency of their homes. This is so that was quite a leap to get to that. We also the project from Sustain Winona resulted in an energy efficiency workshop for residential customers interested in solar. I don't recall exactly how many people were there, Chris. 50-some people came out on a dreary Saturday morning and were really, really engaged in the components and the makeup of an energy audit in your home, in their homes. So that was a good turnout. Another project that has come out of this was a study and efficiency measures completed for the Altura wastewater treatment plant, where they're able now to save 173,000 kilowatt hours a year based upon changes to their energy needs based on changes to their operations. So this results in I think it's at $14,000 a year to them in energy cost reduction, which is significant. And then one of the ongoing things is that we got a CERTS grant to work with the Southeast Minnesota Technical College, Southeast Minnesota State, okay, or Tech, that I put in there because I wasn't sure.
Some of those words, yeah.
But I think this is really cool because one thing that the school is doing is they've changed their carpentry program to be a program called construction technology. And as part of that, they're going to start offering these kinds of certifications that we were looking to bring here from the Building Performance Institute. This one specifically that we're working on is one in air leakage control. So we get people that are certified, get HVAC contractors certified. They can then gives our customers better access to our programs. Groups that we're going to target as part of our energy action plan, we broke it into residential, small and medium businesses, large commercial, industrial users, and institutions. And then we will be creating action plans and metrics and goals for each of those groups. Other efforts, we have the Sustain Winona blog. We have another request in for funding from the McKnight Foundation to fund another round of rural climate dialogues in 2018, and then look to expand the Sustain Winona partnership. The energy vision that is put forth in the plan with the city is that Winona will be a leader in efforts to reduce energy consumption, produce renewable energy in pursuit of long-term environmental sustainability, and reduce the carbon footprint. And also important to state there that the efforts will be available to all, will maintain our high quality of life and vibrant economy, and will not limit growth. Again, this vision came out of the work of the Partners in Energy, which is technically a partnership with the city of Winona and Xcel Energy. That said, Xcel Energy realizes that we don't distinguish our customers within the city limits to our customers in the county. So when we do our promotions and our advertising for all of these programs and the efforts, particularly with respect to residential, it is a county-wide effort, and we will seek to serve all of the residents, not just those in the city. So when it just says city, just kind of expand that in your mind. We have a set of guiding principles that are there to support that vision. Each of those 8 principles corresponding back to something in the vision. So I won't go through them all. You can read them. And I went pretty quickly, but I gave myself a timer here, so I'm going off. Are there any questions that I can answer?
I've got a couple, not necessarily questions, but something you might want to consider in the future. You say you are Winona County, so I just put a gentleman on the Planning Commission that runs a dairy, and you are probably very aware of how much electricity a dairy would use. So are you offering energy? I think you are, but do you offer energy audits to agricultural users? Because they consume a lot more than one little household. So where are we looking at the cost benefit of putting?
Right. So the way we have our customers distinguished within the company is by rate. What rate are you on? So it's residential, the commercial, small commercial, commercial industrial, or large industrial. So a dairy farm would be under one of those rates. And we have small business programs and opportunities. So it would be to the extent that some of those are available. That's one of the I think the benefits of this whole collaboration is that sometimes the further out you get from the metro where our headquarters are, the less accessible some of these programs and the information is, just because line loss, as we call it. But we're here to say to the dairy farmers and all the residents, let us know what you need, and we'll try to put you in touch with the right benefits or the right resources.
All right, because I see them being a huge consumer. Of course, you like consumers because that's how you make your money, and you can offer these programs. It's a given. The other thing too that I don't know if it's in here is from a public health perspective. What's the ideal temperature you should have your thermostat set at? And there is some definite health benefits to having a little bit lower temperature. Actually, one of the most recent articles I heard on was a lower temperature helps your body burn more energy, so it is a weight loss benefit to sit in a cooler house. So I picked up on that right away, but we always have a cold house. But I think there is some public health benefits that I don't know if it's a sideline that would be addressed in, keeping your house at maybe a little lower rate. I mean,
that's a good point, and I'll take that weight loss idea to our ad brand people and see what they can do. We can do a campaign on that. One of the things that we always have to be careful about is crossing the line between energy and other areas, although everything has an interdependence. Mm-hmm. So I didn't mention earlier, but I manage several programs, residential programs, energy audits, and another one is new home construction, both of which we understand that the better built your home is, or the better renovated, the better insulated, all of those provide better indoor air quality. And so indoor air quality, having a number of components, one of which being temperature, does have an impact on the health of the resident. That said, we can't necessarily tout public health benefits because it falls outside energy efficiency.
Okay.
But we recognize that is a part of it.
Sure. Well, correct. You're building these houses so airtight. Now you got to put an air exchange system in it to get. I always told my children, if you see the curtains flowing, you're healthier because you got a good natural air exchange system. And
well, we do see that now with the houses being built so tight and the building codes changing and updating so that heat exchangers are becoming more the norm, where to meet the code requirement of simply balanced ventilation, but it's more efficient and cost effective to put in a heat exchanger than.
Sure. Okay, just a couple of things that come to mind.
Oh, sure. And this is really one of the things we want to do is create this elevated awareness for everyone in the county, because the goals that are set forth for the city of Winona, we want to spread out to everyone and have everyone participate. So I appreciate this opportunity to work with the county in this capacity and on these projects, and to be here today.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you. Thank you very much. 6.5, discuss, approve, or deny hiring a full-time emergency management deputy sheriff. And it starts on page 149 of our packet.
Chief Deputy Mueller is passing out a letter that I received from Lewiston. And you already heard from St. Charles and Pickwick and a few of the other agencies. You can see there's support here from a variety of agencies across the county. Emergency management and homeland security have changed over the years. It's no longer a disaster relief position. Planning responsibility and demands have been increasing. Issues that were once a metro or an urban area problem are spreading to all counties of the states. You just need to pick up the newspaper or watch the TV any day to see some kind of catastrophe, man-made or natural disaster going on. What we need to do is enhance programs that we've had, promote preparedness and readiness. We need to keep up with the state-mandated requirements, trainings, and exercises. Mike Peterson simply didn't have the time necessary to implement some programs. I've talked to these community leaders who have already talked to you and others. They're here to show their support. They are pretty much telling me all the same things, that we need to spend more time on prevention, preparing for, and planning. The day after Mike Peterson left us, we had a severe thunderstorm that damaged several roads in Winona County. Either Jeff Mueller or I had the experience in dealing with emergency management issues, but we work with Homeland Security, and specifically Mike Peterson and his group, and various county departments, and we were able to put in for state reimbursement. From 2014 to 2017, the governor has signed disaster declarations for 52 counties. Over $27 million in relief has been given out over that period of time. Winona County has been very lucky since the floods of 2007. The state of Minnesota at that time told us that we needed a full-time emergency management director, but also that we should have or have to have an assistant emergency management director. We did have that for a time. Andrew Lisson from the fire department, Winona Fire Department, but he has left the fire department for another job. So we never did create that. Well, we did recently. We created the emergency management assistant director, but we don't have one right now. When Bob Builder left, or when Bob Builder and Jeff Kirky worked here, they were full-time emergency management directors. When Mike Peterson took over the duties, he was a dispatch supervisor. The day that he told me that he applied for this position with the state with Homeland Security, he told me that it's imperative that the county separate the two positions. It's too much work for one person to be dispatch supervisor and the emergency management director. We have since filled the dispatch position with Jennifer Lavala, but we're still working on, obviously, the emergency management position. Since I took over as sheriff, I've been trying to get an additional deputy to oversee courthouse security. We have 2 premier security guards at the courthouse. For many reasons, I think that it's imperative that we have a licensed deputy providing this courthouse security. They don't have to be in the courthouse every day. We're getting new magnetometers, and we man those on a random basis right now, and we're getting more and more requests from the judges, from court administration, and the county attorney's office to provide more security for those high-profile cases and just special cases. This deputy that would be assigned, or this deputy that I would like to see us hire, would be assigned then to emergency management. Everyone here has been talking about we really need a full-time emergency management. I know this kind of goes against that, but my position would be that we would flex them to meet the needs of where they're really needed. We have a high-profile case coming up in a couple of weeks, and he would be able to provide, he or she would be able to provide security at the courthouse with the security guards. But when we don't have that high-profile case, they could spend and do a lot of time in emergency management. I just feel that we need to be even better prepared. We need to prevent, prepare, and respond, be prepared to respond to and recover from all the natural disasters and man-made disasters. I want us to be pre-planned or ready for that bad day, because we all know it's going to come. We had a bad time back in 2007 with the flood. St. Charles had the fire at North Star. Those kinds of events are going to happen again. It's just a matter of when. I had talked to Mike Peterson when we scheduled this meeting and asked him if he would like to say a few words. And I think he can speak to when he was but more on what Homeland Security feels can tell us what's required of the emergency management position.
Welcome back, Mike.
Thank you.
Nice
Morning,
to see you.
Commissioners.
Morning.
My new position at the state of Minnesota is Regional Program Coordinator, and I just want to do a brief explanation about what that position is I oversee the county's emergency management programs in southeast Minnesota. So the primary people that I work with is the county emergency manager. So I've gotten to know, over the last 6 months of this job, gotten to know what's going on in all the other counties and really got to know the programs. I am here today not to tell you to hire a full-time emergency manager or a part-time emergency manager. That is the state's, my boss's directives is that we don't tell the counties how to spend their money. So I don't want to make that mistake. But the legal requirements of the county board is that they have an emergency management director and one or more deputy directors. So that is in Minnesota Statutes Chapter 12. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that requirement. How you do that really is what works best for the counties. I can tell you, in my experience in doing that job in Winona County, it was a struggle. I spent hours and hours at home doing emergency management work to try to keep up with the demands, with the planning requirements, the emergency operations plan rewrite that I completed. I did a lot of those hours outside of my office hours, and I think everybody at the sheriff's office puts in a lot of time, and it still wasn't enough for what I did in emergency management. So that is kind of my personal experience. There were things that caused stress about that job, and the primary things that I felt caused stress for me personally was the fact that I felt it should be done better than I was able to do. I think some people have talked about some of the planning requirements in emergency management and exercise and training requirements for preparedness. I felt like I was not able to give as much as what was needed, even though I was spending hours outside of work hours working on emergency management. So that was me personally. I'm not saying that, but Winona County did meet the minimum requirements and planning requirements for emergency management in that capacity. I would like to offer up answering any questions anybody might have about the requirements and responsibilities of emergency management. I also like to make one other item, make sure everybody's aware. The responsibility for emergency management lies with the County Board of Commissioners, and particularly the chair of the County Board, in the absence of emergency management director, is responsible for those duties. I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that as well.
Okay. Commissioner Palmer.
I had a question, and Fire Chief Biddle, if maybe you could help answer this question. The deputy director was one of your firemen, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner is correct. And the city of Winona and Winona County, I believe, contractually agreed upon this in March.
Right. So my question really is it your intention to appoint?
We do have an appointed deputy director
Okay.
with the intent of sharing that position between the city of Winona and Winona County. So we have that position tentatively in place, but we're waiting, I guess, on your decision on how we proceed with this. So.
Very good. Okay.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate the coordination and the collaboration that goes on, just the people that were able to speak this morning with their support. This program operates with many, many skilled volunteers also, the radio coordination people, the dive and rescue, the search teams, in addition to all the police and fire and emergency management and all of the first responders. So I appreciate those efforts, and I think anything we can do to enhance that coordination and collaboration is only going to be for our benefit. These volunteers are skilled and dedicated. I don't know who would put on a wetsuit in the winter to be part of a dive and rescue team. Those are some very important volunteers that we need to make sure they're part of the training and the ongoing work. So I appreciate the efforts that have gone on so far, and I'm in support of the position as presented.
Commissioner Olson?
I got a question for Ron. Ron, anytime in the past, you've named several past directors, has any of them been a licensed deputy?
No.
So the only reason for this would be I'm just worried that that little portion of it's going to hamstring our efforts to hire the most qualified individual if they have to be not only qualified, but they have to be a licensable deputy.
I'm kind of going to go off on a tangent here, too, that I just thought of. It was proposed when Mike Peterson left us that Houston County has a part-time emergency management person. There's a number of places or counties across the state that are part-time. And at that time, I went to Houston County and asked, could we share the emergency management position? And the lady that took that position over said no, she had no interest. And I'm told that she was personally asked again last Friday, and she has no interest in that. Just kind of off on a tangent. When Mike left, it was decided that we could split the two positions that he held. And we did backfill the dispatch position. Emergency management was a part-time position. So what I got out of this was that we could tie this part-time position to another position. So we've been working for months trying to arrange that. And for a variety of reasons, it didn't work. I'm here today to try and explain why I think hiring a deputy is the right way to go. I think we do need to put a lot more effort, a lot more time. I shouldn't say effort because Mike put a lot of effort, a lot more time into emergency management. By having a deputy, we could possibly cut some of our overtime budget because they could work shifts if we really got in a bind like we had 2 years ago when we were 5 deputies down. But I think it's imperative, as I've stated for years, that we really should have a licensed officer over at the courthouse providing security or helping with security. I don't know that I ever answered your question, but yes, I'm trying to tie this position into something else that the county really needs. And in my mind, we do need another deputy. We've needed another deputy for a long time. Again, this position, maybe it's 90-10, maybe it's 80-20, maybe it's 70-30, but it would give us the flexibility to take that deputy, have them on the road if we really need them, have them over at the courthouse when we do have those major cases, but dedicate the time. Mike had to go through certification. You have to go through certification to be an emergency management director. I think it's 400 hours, isn't it?
It's less than that now.
Okay, so it took Mike years to get there because he was holding another position. I would like to see a deputy assigned to this, go through all that training, put the time in, and be able to spend a lot more time on emergency management. Did I ever answer your question?
I think we're probably very close to being all in agreement that we need emergency management. It's that deputy aspect.
We have to have the emergency management.
I understand that.
First question is part-time enough? And I'm saying, and I think all the different agencies behind me are saying part-time is not enough.
Part of what you just said gave me a little fears because, well, if we need this now deputy over here, we're going to pull him over here because we're going to need him. And now you're kind of hamstringing the whole effort.
That's what I'm saying. I'm kind of talking out the side of my mouth. We need to spend more time in emergency management. I'm trying to get more than a half-time position that we had for several years under Mike Peterson.
I understand that. I'm hung up on the whole deputy portion of it.
Sure.
The security that we have at the courthouse came under your recommendation. We approved it to renew that contract. Those aren't licensed deputies.
They're not.
But that came under your recommendation. Now you're going back and saying, well, we should have a licensed deputy over there.
Well, I've asked informally for years that we should have licensed personnel over there. Premier Security has been there for quite a while. and they do fine, but I would really like to see somebody that could oversee them and be there for those high-profile cases. And we've got a grant now for courthouse security, and part of that was matching grant. Chair Ward, isn't that correct? There's a match there.
Yeah. What percentage of that?
Yeah, and that's what we committed to, was giving time. But this position would allow us to have a licensed person over there rather than an unlicensed. It would give us the flexibility. Again, I'm looking for more than a half-time position, and I think this fits the bill to fill two voids with us. I really like to see additional security at the courthouse, and I'd really like to see more than half-time emergency management.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Olson's concerns. I think what we're being asked to do, at one time you said 80-20 would be.
I don't want to say there is a limit on it, because this week maybe we have that high-profile case, and they should be at the courthouse all week. So now it's 95-5.
Right, but it averages.
Next week, maybe they spend the whole time doing emergency management things.
Yeah, and I was okay with that, and then you said 70-30 with some deputy responsibilities.
Yeah, I'm just saying we would have the flexibility to put them where we really needed them.
Okay, so what I think you're asking of us is that we need to trust your judgment in terms of the importance of this position being mostly, at least maybe 70-80% emergency management, because there's coordination and training and all of that, planning and, all of that needs to be done in addition to everything else with that position. And I understand that the courthouse, when there is a high security case, has the need for a deputy professional person to enhance the security. I guess we're just being asked to trust your judgment about allocating the time responsibilities of this position. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Palmer.
As I thought this through, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the responders that showed up this morning. It shows how important the issue really is. Health, safety, and welfare are the immediate mandate of Winona County, and emergency management is a pivotal role. Mike Peterson, extremely talented, very knowledgeable, and he was working two jobs. And at the same time, I would say that he wasn't spending half time on emergency management. I think he spent considerably more time in his off hours and such. Very diligent and very dedicated. My sense is this. One, we're looking at the high probability of there being greater use of the magnetometer going forward. In fact, Winona County probably has not used the magnetometer to the degree that other counties do on a regular basis.
I think most all courthouses have courthouse security where you come into the building and it's a secure, entrance.
I've been to those courthouses because of meetings that I attend on behalf of the county. I think that listening to the responders and such, Mr. Goltz and the rest of them, and Bob, the issue that I think that we're really looking at is identifying, I think we've identified deficiencies in the training that could be happening that perhaps isn't, and the coordination that's not happening that perhaps could. I think Mr. Peterson indicated that there weren't enough hours in the day to put ourselves on a good path like that, if I'm correct in stating that. My sense is that what we need is a full-time emergency. I've thought this over, and I've come down in several different places on it. And that's why I appreciate the input this morning. But I think, in my mind, what we need is a full-time emergency management director that can work on those countywide training and planning and that type of thing that we really need. And with the increased use of magnetometer and the fact that we've only got two folks over there, and you got somebody on the magnetometer, you only got one person for a courtroom, I frankly think you need another deputy. And that's kind of where I'm going to fall in on it.
Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah, and traditionally in the 5 years I've been here, expansion of personnel hasn't happened, but I understand the need, and this is one time where I can support an expansion there. And the correspondence and direction I've got maybe from that I talked to the mayor of St. Charles yesterday, they're all concerned about a full-time emergency management position. That's what I'm being asked for from the community, and I really think that's our responsibility. To split the position 80-20, I don't know. I guess I'd like to see us put a full-time person just in the emergency management, and then if there's additional duties, we've got to figure that out.
I've got a couple concepts and concerns. I agree with Commissioner Olson. The skill set that's outlined in being a gun-carrying police deputy and this position, and I think we could relate to Mike Peterson. Does anybody else have that combination of skill set in the emergency management that you work with?
Yes, there are several counties that have licensed deputies as emergency management, but there are also several counties that have full-time emergency management or part-time emergency management that does not have any license capabilities.
Okay,
So
it does exist.
It does exist, yes. The exact numbers I couldn't say, but I know off the top of my head, Nicollet County has a deputy. Olmsted County has a licensed deputy. Those are the two that popped to the top of my head. Also, Fillmore County has a licensed deputy that does emergency management as well.
Okay.
So it does exist.
It does exist. Okay.
I can tell you the learning curve for emergency management is sometimes a little bit steeper because they've spent their whole entire career working on law enforcement, and it's a little bit different world, but it certainly is also a good mix sometimes too, depending on the counties and that individual situations.
All right. I have concerns with that combined skill set. One area that we haven't touched on is the role of public health in emergency preparedness, emergency management. We have Jeff Peterson in public health that works on plans and everything because natural disasters, public health comes into play. So I don't know if there's any combined responsibilities, duties there that could be shared within departments.
Well, they have coordinated with the emergency management position in the sheriff's office, and obviously Jeff focuses mostly on the public health aspect of it. Then Jill Johnson, she left, is involved in that as well. They have certain requirements for the state, as you know.
Right.
In looking at Jeff's position, though, and we talked a little bit about this, we didn't see that there was any available time because he also handles a number of other duties already that would be able to do more than what they're already doing in terms of coordination.
Right.
So I don't see how we could really offload any of that work onto him at this point.
Be worth continuing the conversation, I think. And I'm unclear as to how the city of Winona appointing an assistant. How is our contractual agreement? Because I'm a little concerned. Who reports to who?
The state requires you to have a deputy manager, as Mike said. Sure. And so what we organized with the city was they wanted to have someone in their one of their employees be able to focus a little bit more on the city, but also work with the county. Mm-hmm. So we met with the fire chief and the manager there, and when we put together the agreement, they were going to have a deputy position appointed, and then we would have a deputy position appointed with the idea that it's a collateral duty for someone, kind of a backup, maybe 10% of their time, in case you have that big call out or in case you have, the emergency manager not there. So it was kind of they have one, we kind of have one, and they're really to help us, help the emergency manager assist and fill in and that kind of thing in a smaller role. The city, obviously, because it's one of our major population centers, felt that they needed to have something that was more robust than just the assistant that we would have that would be filling in a little bit once in a while and learning some of the ropes. Our agreement is basically that they have this this position appointed in the fire department.
So would the county emergency management person, would those two assistants report to that position?
Not in terms of supervisory, but in terms of coordination, they all work together.
Okay, all right. Well, I am a survivor of the flood of '07. I was on the board when that happened, and yeah, there was a lot of coordination and everything, but communication is essential in those activities. And even though the chair is in charge, I learned to stay on the hill and let the professionals do that important work. Now, in the past, this position has reported to the sheriff, and then it got pulled out of the sheriff's department and reported to the administration.
Did it report to the administration?
Yes.
It did for a while, yes.
Yes. So now, am I understanding it's totally underneath the sheriff's?
Well, when I came on board, Mike was under the sheriff, and that's the way we've approached it since then.
Okay, because I have a history of it being several different ways. So the intent is that it would stay under the sheriff's
That's the proposal.
Okay, all right. And as Commissioner Jacob, I've been listening to constituents and organizations, and the lack of time to do trainings is critical. Now, Winona County is part of the Emergency Communications Board, which Mr. Peterson's very well aware of. That's a 11 county and city group that was in charge of the 800 megahertz project, and now we're moving into new areas, and there's always talk about multi-county trainings that would be important. And then, of course, we have emergency medical services, too, which is more the ambulance and first responders group that is heavily dependent on. I see my Pickwick friends out there that do a lot of this work, and it kind of ties into, it's an integral part of the emergency management that needs some help and assistance in keeping up to date with all their trainings. A lot of people don't realize a volunteer emergency medical services person has the same training requirements as a paid professional. And we take that, sometimes we take that too lightly, that our volunteers that do that work are so important. And I know Mr. Peterson, when he was at the position, did help and coordinate those activities. And they feel that, we have some lack because of lack of personnel. I guess with my fellow board members, I'm cautious of putting a licensed peace officer and what kind of person we would get to apply. And I can see this position tying in with all those other partners, being a full-time position. And it's not it's not if, it's when the next emergency comes about. And our country is more susceptible to things happening nowadays than maybe they were, even 4 or 5 years ago. So I am leaning towards a full-time position versus that deputy deputy thing.
Could I interrupt for just a moment?
Sure, no interruption, conversation.
Okay. I think Chief Deputy Mueller has a couple of comments.
Oh, okay, sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add a couple, not to belabor points that have already been spoken, but just in speaking and trying to address the point of that combination of the position and kind of how it got to there. With Mike's position as it was with the PSAP being a department supervisor, did not allow him the time, as we had spoken, to fulfill some of the duties with emergency management. I guess as it kind of is foreseen, or as we had thought it through, with the courthouse security being the flexibility would be more flexible than the PSAP / emergency management position that Mike had, where there would be more time that would be afforded to the emergency management spot. They got kind of talking about percentages and things like that, 80-20s and 70-30s and 90-10s. I think the flexibility of that spot shouldn't really be understated, meaning that a lot of times it'll be 100-0. Their main focus will be emergency management and working in emergency management, with the offshoot of having to do some courthouse security duties on occasion, at least anyway. I guess really the thought process behind it was actually trying to be a little bit even more fiduciary responsibility, saying that let's try to squeeze that position to be able to get some of those duties for courthouse security, but really the focus on emergency management, at least anyway, so we didn't have to ask for additional stuff to help out with the courthouse and things like that, with the hopes that we would be able to make it work with the emergency management. I think it would work more than it did, at least under the PSAP/emergency management position that Mike had. And then just one quick point to address, having to do with the license part and getting the qualified personnel, really just using some of the models of some of the other counties who have had and who do have licensed officers in that position anyway. One of the things that I kind of found is a big benefit to that is that position also was somewhat fluid, meaning that somebody will spend some time in emergency management. I don't want to put a year on it, but years in emergency management, and then transition out of that. One of the things that some of the counties have benefited from that is that now you have a trained person who is in emergency management, who takes another position on the county. A new person comes in, does the training through emergency management, but you also have an additional person now. So when an emergency does happen, you're not relying on necessarily just one person in emergency management, and only with that training and experience to try to do all the duties that are required, where you can lean on several people for that, at least anyway. Does it narrow the candidate pool of the potential people who would be qualified or eligible for that job? Potentially it does. Doesn't mean that it dries it up, though, and I think that you could potentially still find the right person for that.
Commissioner Olson.
I appreciate all the discussion. I think the primary focus needs to be emergency management. Secondary focus would be the deputy. As you say, somebody could come in and train, and they have to go through many hours of training, hundreds of hours of training to be the emergency management. They could also come in and go through that training and become a licensed peace officer. So by combining them, I think you are going to hamstring the hiring efforts to get the best person available out there. And, I would just like to see a focus on emergency management, primarily, secondary, the deputy aspect of it, rather than combining them up front.
Mr. Fritz?
Yeah, I just want to echo those comments that Jeff had. The sheriff and I, Jeff, Maureen, we had these very similar discussions going back and forth over whether it should be a sworn position or a not sworn position. And really, I think all the things that have been said are true. And one of the reasons we're here is because, we felt we were trying to accommodate the sheriff's department to get the best fit that we could get. But those same things came up, and we talked about them and the pros and cons, and so we gave it to you guys to make the tough decision on that. Our recommendation's in line with the sheriff because it felt that best fit what we have fiduciarily. We just had another deputy position. The odds are with our budget that it's probably not going to get funded. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't spend 100% of the time on emergency management either. So we just wanted to bring forward this particular, what we thought was best fit. But we understand those other arguments. We talked a lot about them. So.
Commissioner Palmer.
I would say I completely understand your thoughts and your comments. My main concern, though, is that, and it's developed recently, is that if we do have an emergency management director / deputy, that the ease at which one might become working more in the deputy area than emergency management is real. The second thing is that hiring a dual role like that, there's nothing to say that person wouldn't just transfer into a regular deputy role and you'd end up having to try to hire a dual purpose again. So, on that basis, I would move that we hire a full-time emergency management director and also request the sheriff's department to bring back their position with respect to the need for another deputy.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Palmer, second by Commissioner Olson to hire a full-time emergency management position. And the sheriff.
And suggest, we don't direct the sheriff. Suggest the sheriff also bring back his staffing issue, yeah.
Can I just ask a quick point on that? Would that be bring back during the budget process or bring back sometime outside the budget process?
Bring back at your convenience.
Okay, any further discussion? Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, I agree with that motion and can support it. And considering that we've always had a halftime position, if we went to this 80-20, we're not making much progress towards a full-time position. I mean, we've got a little bit more than we've got. The community has expressed to me they want a full-time dedicated emergency management person, so I can support the motion.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I was willing to support the 80-20, realizing that that's certainly an improvement over where we are. But even when you were here speaking out of the side of your mouth, you sort of alluded to assigning regular routine deputy activities. And so I saw the erosion immediately, and that would be a concern. And I realized that what you really need is an additional deputy to handle some combination of routine duties and enhanced courthouse security. So I think if we approve this, we will have what we need, and you can come back to us with what you need. And I understand that need, because I think even your compromise of 80-20 was trying to be realistic and to give yourself some flexibility, but I think it would be better covered if we had a full-time and if you came back with your case for an additional deputy. Public security is obviously an important concern all across the board. So I think that would fill both parts of what you were asking for today in terms of flexibility.
I have a question on these courthouse security. We're under a contract with a private entity that does provide, is it 2 individuals? 2. So what's their job qualifications? And maybe we don't need to get into it, but so where I'm going with this is that, okay, so this person, emergency management, is going to report to you as a sheriff, and you have the authority and the ability to designate people. If you feel this high-profile case is potentially an emergency management situation, would you be able to assign this person or anybody else in your department to be additional courthouse security for that length of time? I mean, is there a skill set that is...
First thing that comes to my mind would be liability. You have to train them appropriately.
Right.
And you'd have to look at the other issues, the legal issues involved in that. Maybe we could research it, but I'm not sure. Just off the top of my head, it just seems kind of fraught with potential problems.
Well, or part of the research, if this is, we've said courthouse security a number of times this morning, but it comes and goes. It's not every day we need, 10 hours of courthouse security. It comes and goes. Do we expand the contract to cover courthouse security, to relieve that burden from the sheriff?
I think the concern, I'm sorry.
Cover our concerns, our areas of responsibility. Just something to put in the mix of.
In discussions with the sheriff, and I can let him speak for himself, but I think the concern is that we have an outside agency we want to monitor with an internal person that's trained and has other abilities, and that expanding the contract would give us more security time, but it would still be there would be no supervision by us, or very little.
Have we ever explored any excess capacity in the City of Winona Police Department to do any kind of, I don't know, any kind of courthouse security? Again, it's not a consistent need. It's a need that comes and goes.
Well, it should be a consistent need. We should be providing more security than we do at our courthouse. And we've been very lucky that we've never had a very serious incident in the courthouse yet. Yeah, knock on wood. Again, the potential is there every day when we open the doors until even after we lock the doors, because we don't know if somebody's hiding in the building or not. But there's a lot of volatile situations, and we've been able to deal with them. Typically, the Winona Police Department does respond when we get that call from court admin or the county attorney, and we get there as quick as we can. Chief Deputy Mueller and I aren't always in the office. The police department's not always in the LEC. The courthouse security guys are not necessarily in the courthouse. They might be over here doing a security check. They could be over at the county office building providing security there because of a volatile or hostile situation.
Could I just mention one thing? One of their charges as well, the security company, is to do their rounds outside of the courthouse too, so.
And their training, I don't check, I've asked for their training records to see what they have, specifically their qualifications, and I haven't gotten that from the company yet, but they are armed guards. We're paying for armed guards. Occasionally, we ask for a third. Not too often. We try the best we can to handle the day-to-day, and, we have high-profile cases coming up. We have murder cases. We need to provide adequate security, and adequate, I would like to see more than adequate. And I would like to see us man the magnetometer and provide security to those, not just the employees that are in the courthouse and the judges and the staff, but the public that comes and goes. I really can't think of another courthouse that you go to that they don't provide security, checkpoint security at the front door. We do, but it's very random. It's very seldom. And we should be checking people. Part of the grant that we just got is we're going to have to provide more of that. And we will. Chief Deputy Mueller will be over there. I'll be over there. Jail Administrator Buswell, Sergeant Klinger, deputies when we have more. We have some days that we have more deputies than others, obviously. So when we have staff, we will man it. But I'm just saying, with this position that I'm proposing, we could do more, and we should do more before something happens.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I think part of this discussion is the rationale for having a trained deputy at the courthouse, which would come up under your next proposal when you bring it to us. I can understand the need for a trained deputy, not taking anything away from the professional agency, but the level of training is very different, and the level of response. I know we just had a incident where there was an attempted jail break, and because we had the trained person with the right experience on hand, it did not go anywhere, thank goodness. But it could have been.
I would like to give kudos to the
yes,
staff
very
over at the
different.
courthouse. I say we haven't had any issues, and we really haven't, and they've dealt with them. So not to say that they're not adequate. I would just like to see it enhanced.
Yes, I think that's the next conversation when you come back with an additional position.
I just wanted, yeah, thank you. Just to remind the board, and I think we presented this to the board, but there was a very comprehensive courthouse security study done, and as Sheriff Ganrud was saying, we need to do more. There have been incidents in other courthouses across the state, as you're well aware of, and it's not just the high-profile cases, but it's the child support cases, the child custody cases that can cause people to have come into the courthouse with things that they shouldn't be handling. So we do have a courthouse security committee that's been meeting. In fact, out of that came the Safe and Secure Courthouse grant, but that's just a small amount of money that pays for something that's very needed. But I think, I appreciate that the board is looking to explore the possibility of other avenues to provide ultimately security for the courthouse and the whole county campus, if you want to call it that. The community office building is also another place that, community services office building, that is another place where there can be incidences. So, and just on behalf of my office, I wanted to thank the Sheriff's Department and the City Police Department and the Fire Department too, because we've had incidences at the courthouse where they've responded quickly when we've had suspicious things appear. But it is extremely important, and I think you're going to hear more and more how we need to fund security measures at our government office buildings.
Okay, we have a motion. I have just one last question. Okay, so the motion is to go full-time. This is a change. We haven't had a full-time for some years. there's an advocacy that maybe, to change the hours and everything. So when will this position be reviewed? Is it a reviewable? So we're going 100% time. Will this be at the sheriff's discretion or the board's discretion? We're kind of creating a new position, full-time. Well, full-time, not really.
In my mind, not really. I mean, you're just taking Mike's position, which had
Expanding
two
it.
parts,
Right.
and they were just 50-50, let's say, even though they weren't. But let's say 50-50. You had one we hired already, and now we're just hiring the other one. So to me, so if you're talking about review, I guess, we have the normal review of the personnel and what they're doing, and that's up to the sheriff in terms of their priorities and direction and so forth. But as far as discussing that position with the board, what would you be looking for, I guess?
Well, we're having a group advocate for less than full-time. So at some point in time, not that will we ever get caught up on, we're saying that emergency management didn't take as much of a priority in some of the trainings and some of the skill sets that people are asking for. Will we ever reach that total capacity? Probably not.
I think with emergency management, you could have 2 or 3 positions if you really wanted to plan that well. Okay. It's one of those things that, you can do as much as you want.
Sure.
It's striking a balance between what you need and what's reasonable, yeah. And I think so the position will be 100% utilized. We should see some improvements, obviously. I think the benchmarks would be the communication with our volunteer groups, the other cities in the county, and so forth in terms of tabletop drills and interactions, and that should go up a lot once the person's trained and can get involved. So from that perspective, because it's not just a position, it's a program. It's something that the sheriff's office can bring back and say, okay, here's the state of what we did the last year, some kind of report back to the board as a emergency management program.
And then, so emergency management is a position, but there's a lot more that goes into than just the position. So is there a line item budget for, doing these tabletop exercises costs resources. So we have some money in the budget to allow this person to do those things?
There is a budget for emergency management.
Okay.
I think you may see that it might need a little more money because you're probably going to do some more outreach that you didn't do in the past. I'm not sure because I'd have to go back and review it with Pat, but my hunch is that it's at bare bones.
Okay.
So we'll probably have to look at it. But
there is grant money there too.
Yeah, there's some grant money for the position, and
I'm sure Mr. Peterson, being the state coordinator, can help us with those resources.
Yeah. So there is a budget. It's just a matter of
Okay.
tweaking it so that
Right.
we can do that to
If
support
I
the
could
process.
jump in too, when you have a full-time position, we're finding this in our crime victims too. You've got a person then that can look for those grants, and there are lots of grants, Office of Justice programs. There's grants that go wanting, really. But as Mr. Peterson also said, and of course I did my due diligence and looked up Chapter 12, but it does say in here that each political subdivision, which the county is, shall establish a local organization for emergency management in accordance with the state emergency management program. And then it also says, as a county, each county emergency management organization must have a director and 1 or more deputy directors. So this would be fulfilling a legal requirement as well. And that must be appointed by the county board. So you're doing your due diligence today.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Do we need to restate does everybody understand what the motion was? Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, responders. I entertain we take a 5-minute break before we get into the next hot topic. All right, thank you. The weather? No.
Short winter, very
Yeah.
good.
I think by the weekend,
Yeah.
single digits.
Remember, we're in January.
But you know, at my
Make it
house,
longer.
public health to do anything. I can't cross country ski.
I'm just not sure what format.
Well, but Twin City's supposed to get a lot of them.
I have one of those watches. I forget to wear it sometimes. That tells you. But it tells you, like, stand up, breathe,
I wonder about the Birkenmeyer.
Well, the whole recreational industry.
Yeah, right.
That's a break.
It is, yeah.
Okay, are we ready to call it back to order?
Sit too long.
There's nothing.
Yeah, not good for you.
We'll come back to order,
Same thing. 6.8 then. Okay.
and we are on item 6.6. Oh, are we under a different?
6.6. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
6.6, discuss, approve, provide direction regarding the cooperative agreement with the City of Goodview for County Road 129 project.
This is an item that's continued from your December 12th meeting. As you will recall, the City of Goodview has indicated a desire to do some sewer and water extension in conjunction with the county's project to reconstruct County Road 129. The county board deferred it to this meeting to provide an opportunity for Hillsdale and Rolling Stone Townships to be made aware that this is being discussed and give them an opportunity to weigh in. Since our last meeting, I forwarded them some information, and then their regular monthly meetings, actually both of the townships were yesterday evening. So I attended those, as did Commissioner Kavesi and Commissioner Jacob. So I'll start with Hillsdale. That one's probably a little bit easier. As the information was looked at in a little bit more detail, they looked at it and they said, this doesn't affect us. We don't have a problem with it, is essentially the bottom line. The actual roadway is in Rolling Stone Township, the part of the segment, and there's no Hillsdale Township that directly fronts on that. A portion of the Hidden Valley Trailer Park, or the bulk of it, is in Hillsdale Township. That's already served by the Goodview Winona sewer system. So it really doesn't change anything for them. They're strongly opposed to any annexation, but this doesn't directly affect that. So they didn't have a problem with it. Rolling Stone Township, they indicated they've got a good relationship with Goodview as far as as a property needs to annex to connect. And there's a payment, as I understand, that takes place there with an informal agreement. And they indicated they were okay with the project proceeding with the sewer and water extensions. They did indicate that they would have liked to have been, directly contacted. And both townships indicated an appreciation that the county board, took a step back and said, hey, let's make sure that we talk to the townships, that they're not hearing about this first after the fact. So they both indicated an appreciation of that. Since the meetings yesterday evening, I touched base with Dan Mateka. I do understand that he has spoken this morning with Tim Nyers, who's on the Rolling Stone Township Board. And that's, as I understand, the individual that Mr. Mateka normally coordinates with on these issues. So he's here. He could speak to that directly if you wish. And I guess another update, as of the writing of this board item, it indicates that this would be pending approval as to form by the county attorney's office. That has taken place now. So, if you choose to move forward, the agreement it's indicated as the December 27th agreement, which starts on page 160 of your agenda. If you choose to move forward, you could. That is approved as to form, so that could be approved and signed at this meeting if you so choose.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, and attending those meetings last night, both of the townships were certainly grateful that the county board stepped back. And I think, one of the concerns I had was specifically with Rolling Stone Township. There's an informal agreement between Rolling Stone and Goodview on existing sewer and water that goes into Rolling Stone Township from Goodview. I think where I was kind of struggling was that this is an extension of Goodview's line into Rolling Stone Township. I don't know what agreement they have with anything going into the future. But I didn't feel really that as a county board, I don't feel have the authority to tell Rolling Stone, you're going to take their sewer. And I still, as of last night at the Rolling Stone meeting, Goodview still hadn't reached out to Rolling Stone. And I don't know, maybe if anyone from Goodview wants to speak to that.
Good morning and thank you. And to answer your question, Commissioner Jacob, yes, this morning I did talk to Tim Nyers, who's on the Rolling Stone Township Board. We basically reiterated everything that has been talked about before, that we have a very good working relationship with each other concerning annexation requests, or requests for services maybe is more of the appropriate term. And he did not feel a need to change the processes that we've had in place in my tenure with the city, which is 11 years.
Is there any formal written agreement between Goodview and Rolling Stone on other utilities running into Rolling Stone Township?
I have to be honest with you, I cannot answer that. I do not know that.
Okay. It seemed that both Rolling Stone and Hillsdale were supportive of the concept, and this is the right thing to do. I would prefer if you had some type of written agreement with Rolling Stone that Rolling Stone welcomes you putting your sewer into their jurisdiction, and I don't really feel like we have that authority, but it seems like there's a piece missing here as we move forward. If we vote this through today, I hardly feel like that's our authority.
If I may, Commissioner Jacob and the rest of the board, there's another specific instance where I can speak that we have extended sewer and water on a township road, and to serve someone who did request our services. In that project, which was about a $100,000 project, I recall, we got the services to the individual who requested it. That was annexed in, an orderly annexation between us and the township, but at the same time we also stubbed in, I believe, 4 other properties, if not 5 other properties, that currently aren't in the city. And that was all done with just a verbal understanding between us and the township board that this was going to be done, and they totally supported it.
Okay. I guess so, until your conversation this morning, none of that had taken place. And so I guess my concern would be, without some type of written contract, if you decided you wanted to run a line halfway into Rolling Stone Township, the understanding is that could happen with the agreement, the informal agreement.
And has happened.
Okay. And so I don't feel good about being the one to authorize that to happen through this contract.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I appreciate the chance to attend the township meetings last night. Gave me a different perspective than what I get at the township officers' meetings when 50 people come together. I can understand, some of the organizational pieces of this. I'm not feeling that we can direct the city of Goodview to address these agreements any further than their best judgment. Although I would encourage them to review their informal agreements, and I'm not sure if what you did this morning comes under that description. Apparently, both parties are secure with that, so it possibly could. There were no comments at either of these two township meetings about any type of agreement. The comments really were made about the information and the timing, and, you know, the township people just really wanted to be in the loop. And I think, you know, that as much as we can, you know, we are trying to do that, especially by pulling it from the December 12 agenda. So, you know, I would like to see the project move forward with the understanding that the city will review their informal agreements and you know, realize perhaps from our perspective, we would like to see something a little more solid than a verbal, although it's worked and, you know, there don't seem to be any complaints about it, but I would just encourage you to do that.
Certainly.
Commissioner Pomeroy.
One thing I would suggest is, and I'm surprised you don't have it yet, is, first of all, I'm for the project going forward. But you might want to consider an orderly annexation agreement, you know, instead of the informal. Just saying we agree on this, that, and the other thing. But orderly annexation agreements are really a good tool to use as you move forward with regard to potential annexations and such. So
we consider those agreements when we receive requests. So we don't have one out there right now for someone who has not requested.
Well, I'm not talking about having an orderly annexation agreement for one. I'm talking about an overall orderly annexation agreement between Goodview and whichever township you deal with.
Just something that outlines the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And with regard to the annexation, I mean, that's really going to be between the township and Goodview. If there are annexations, we don't know that there are going to be any.
When you start talking annexation,
No.
then there are fighting words when
No,
you.
what the orderly annexation agreement simply sets the framework for their discussions in moving forward in these areas.
I know. And annexation is heavily leaned towards cities. It's against townships, and there's a lot of bad.
What I'm getting at, though, is it has to be agreed to by both parties.
Which our individual annexation agreements are.
Right.
The process is that our city council would approve it, then pass it on to the township board for approval.
Okay.
Basically, before that, we've gotten an informal approval already before that. They act on it, get it back to us. We send it out to the municipal board of adjustment and get their final blessing on it at that point in time.
Commissioner Jacob.
So I do feel like there's been maybe a lack of reach out from Goodview to both Hillsdale and Rolling Stone Township. Had we moved forward a month ago, we would have been the ones authorizing sewer being put in to Rolling Stone Township from Goodview. And I don't think that's not our jurisdiction. And it seems like somewhere between then and now, you still should have reached out to Rolling Stone. And I guess that happened this morning, and there's an informal agreement.
Is there a gentleman from Rolling Stone?
There's two.
Can I ask a simple question first? I don't think it's as though we're authorizing extensions beyond our right-of-way. I mean, that has to be decided between yourself and the other entities involved. I mean, this project is simply about the right-of-way with our road. I mean, if they're going to take it into townships, I think that has to be agreed to by you and the townships, doesn't it?
We would, I guess, once again, go back to specific requests to receive services.
No, but I mean, in this initial, in constructing the utilities as part of this road project, we aren't authorizing the extension into township jurisdictions. We're simply putting it within our right-of-way in case they have to use it in the future.
The bulk of the pipes that we're talking about would be buried in the County Road 129 right-of-way.
Right.
A portion of that which is within the boundary of Rolling Stone Township, not City of Goodview.
Right. But it's still within the county's right of way.
It's in the county's right of way, correct. And any place where it's outside of that right of way, it would need to be in some type of an easement that allows that pipe to be installed and maintained there.
Right, from the township to Goodview.
From the landowner to
Right, okay.
to Goodview.
Okay. Thank you. You wanted to call on people from Rolling Stone?
Yes, was there somebody here from Rolling Stone?
Oh, I thought you said Goodview.
No, I thought, yeah, I thought somebody said somebody was, but you talked to somebody from Rolling Stone. Okay, all right, okay. Well, the packet on page 161, so are we still, is it still open for discussion? I'm looking at that little note in the upper left-hand corner. Are we being asked today, are we still discussing the ownership of the road or the transfer of the road? Because the one I have, looks like I'm
In your packet, there's two different agreements, and I had put those both in the December meeting agenda, not really knowing what the intent of it, where the discussion was planned to go. So the agreement that's on page 160 that starts there, it's indicated as a December 2017 updated draft agreement. That one based.
That's 158.
Okay, I'm sorry, the version I printed out from is different then. Okay, that's 158, all right.
Where the county keeps the road is page 150.
Right, so.
Yeah, it's the amended version, it's page 160.
Yeah, and then the other agreement.
Yeah, 158.
160 or 158.
What?
The one that says March 2017 draft agreement not entered into, that's the one essentially you rejected at the March of 2017 meeting, which would transfer the road. But so that's in here, I guess probably at this point more for information. But what would be suggested as entering into would be the one that's on page 160 or 158, depending on what version. The one that says December 2017, county keeps the road in the little blue box, or whatever color box you get.
So nothing changed in the county keeps the road. But the question is that a done deal, or with this change, is that open for discussion?
I think we voted on it.
We did vote on it.
It was voted on in March of 2017.
Right, but so I am asking, because this project, this extension seems to somewhat change, but if we feel it's a done deal, then we'll move on.
That's up to your discretion.
But I do have some question with this, I'm sorry.
I think in December we did move forward with the agreement that you're talking about.
As I understand, you specifically just deferred it to this meeting.
Yeah,
you didn't.
No, what I'm saying is the construction part of it we did with regard to the utilities to be extended, but we had previously voted that we were going to go with the agreement where we kept the road.
Regardless of that, I think you can make whatever decision you want at this point. But as my recollection from the December 12th meeting was, let's table this to allow the conversations with the township. There was discussion amongst the board members of not wanting to revisit the issue of the road transfer to Goodview.
Earlier in 2017, we voted to approve the agreement where we kept the road reluctantly, but we did.
So March 17th of 2017, the board approved a motion to proceed with the project with the county keeping the road, yes. Yes.
But as the discussion at our last meeting, that door kind of got, in my opinion, that door kind of got opened up again a little bit. Commissioner Kavesi.
I think the difference was that in November, the city of Goodview proceeded with plans to install the sewer and water. And that's why it came back to us with the continued agreement that the county keeps the road, whether it's reluctantly or not. But the new part of that was the language on the sewer and water plans. So in essence, we're not really readdressing the March 2017 draft. We're readdressing what came after that by adding the sewer language to it. That's my understanding of where we are.
I guess I included both options in the board packet with the understanding that the board could take this wherever they wanted to, frankly. I mean, based on the understanding I had from the December meeting a month ago, was there wasn't a lot of interest in, that the consensus was to honor what was decided in March.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Okay, I would like to move that we adopt the December 2017 updated draft agreement where the county keeps the road, noting that the additional language addresses the sewer issues which are being placed in the right-of-way for County Road 129, and also noting that we are encouraging the City of Goodview to review their informal agreements with the townships.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the December 27 updated draft agreement where the county keeps the road. Made by Commissioner Kavesi, seconded by Commissioner Pomeroy. Any further discussion? Commissioner Olson.
Just to touch base, Dave, we could revisit this ownership of the road in the future, correct?
Yes.
Anytime.
Yes.
County board at any time could revoke this road to Goodview. That's under the statutory authority. You have the authority to do that. Not necessarily that would be good policy, but just you do have the authority to do that.
A beautiful road, Dan.
It'll be a very nice road when we get down with it.
Yeah. And it doesn't set, it's not unprecedented because let's see, which one was it today? Item 5.4, we turned a small portion of the road back to a township. So this is something that can be reviewed. I do have some concerns because now that the city is elected to extend services, our project is probably going to cost some more. Because anytime an engineering company that's building the road has to work with another engineering project that's putting stuff in the road right away. So how have we, budgeted, or is there anything like, when you build a building and you have a change order, it's going to cost you money? Is there any compensation factor for increased, costs due to changes or delays or?
If you look on that agreement, again, page 160 or 158, paragraph 2.
Right, the
identifies all the things that the city is responsible for. I put a fair bit of thought into that, bounced it off of Assistant County Engineer Troy Draft to make sure we covered all the pieces. I'm very comfortable with that language that, it basically takes all the components of the project that are added because of the utility extensions and makes those the city's responsibility. So we're covered. From a standpoint of contracting, you'll have probably a general contractor who will be a dirt work and road contractor. They'll probably have a subcontractor doing the utility work, and they'll probably have a subcontractor doing the paving.
Okay, because I know it'll cost us more, and I really have some angst with some of my constituents driving on substandard gravel county roads, and I feel that I've always felt this was a excessive suburban road with a lot of features and benefits that my constituents don't benefit from. And I really have some angst over this. Well, we're not going to annex, but I mean, for a city as conservative as the city of Goodview is, to spend $400,000 on a project that only encompasses, and I think Mr. Mateick said 10, 12 properties, something doesn't set right in my mind of how that's cost effective. And this lack of, I guess I'll say, respect for the townships in these, quote, annexation issues is troublesome to me. And I know the council and the current administration is saying this, but councils and administration change. And so something that's not as a process or in writing is problematic in this day and age with all the change that goes on. So, Commissioner Palmer.
I would mention that as time goes on, I think if we find that there are substantial annexations along that road, I wouldn't hesitate to revisit the ownership of the road at that point.
Okay. All right. So, any other discussion? We have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved. All right. Continue on.
This is a good one.
Thank you very much. We are at 6.7, receive overview of 2017 recordings. Was Bob, he stepped out? Okay, why don't we just jump to 6.8 and discuss the modify approved resolution establishing 2019 minimum salary for elected positions.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made by Commissioner Palmer, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the salaries just so the public knows, it's by state statute that this is a requirement. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Approved. All right. Now, we'll go back to the recordings. Maybe in the time, Marie, Commissioner Kmet? Oh, here he comes. Okay.
Motion to adjourn. Oh. You're up, Bob.
A lot of activity.
I have to say that earlier this morning, Commissioners, I checked with Commissioner Palmer just to see what he kind of thought about the agenda, and he said, oh, probably about 1:30, so you're a couple hours ahead of schedule.
You were ready to go to lunch.
On a serious note, thank you very much. I wanted to update you on 2017. It wasn't just another year for real estate in Winona County. In fact, for many people, it was very challenging, a very challenging time buying a home or land. Most of the year, the home inventory, those homes that were for sale, was extremely tight. There were not nearly as many sellers as buyers. Sometimes there were multiple offers. We had a lot more people in our office with questions. I noticed that different times of the year there was a lot of frustration. But in the end, from the end of 17, our home sales were up 4% countywide and 5% in the city of Winona. So I think different thoughts they had during the year, and I know how tight it was, and I know how many people were just exhausting different parties that they were talking to, trying to get an opportunity to buy a home. I think we came out quite well. 718 sold countywide, and in the city of Winona, 420. There were at least 3 records set in 17. During July, we had 96 homes that sold. That was the highest number ever for the month of July. The closest that we had was 2014, was 76. And then in July as well, we had 15 high-end homes sell, more than 300,000 each. That was also a record. And then 17 produced the largest number of individuals and single persons purchasing real estate in the history of the county. And so that also added to the number of people that were looking for homes where, if we went back 25 years, it would traditionally be mom and dad, but we're in a much different society today, and so we have an upswing in single people that are buying real estate. It's also a change in a trend that started after 2008 when parties started moving to apartments. They determined at that time, after the downturn, that maybe a home wasn't the best of investments. I think we've come full circle. I think we're back to where people are definitely wanting to buy homes and feeling that's a good asset or a good investment. All right, we had, through the year, 48 homes that sold over 300,000. We're asked about that quite a bit. 17 in the city of Winona, 7 were in the townships, and we briefed the townships the middle of December about the activity and some of the things that are going on with real estate. Our high sale for 2017 was a home along County Road number 1, the Apple Blossom Drive, and it sold for $645,000. It has a view of the Mississippi River and the access to the Mississippi at the Dresbach Landing. We had 78 commercial sales. That's another high for 2017. It produced $26 million of sales. The $26 million, however, was not a record. That record was set in 2016 when we had $45 million, but at that time only 60 sales. Here's a little bit of the breakdown. Apartment buildings, there were 23, warehouses 13, office space 9, restaurants, bars, and clubs, there were 8, and there were 7 retail. And just to mention a couple of properties that were included right across the street, the Hardee's building and land, $800,000 was paid by the Port Authority of Winona. The new mail center at Mankato Avenue on Broadway, it's drawn a lot of attention. It's a nice looking building. Some work was done there, sold for $197,000. The longtime Windcraft location on West 5th Street in Winona, they sold that building after moving to new facilities in the East Industrial Park, sold it for $700,000. And there is a very, very active business there that is, I understand, meeting expectations within their firm, so that sounds good. The Alba House sold for $125,000, and then the Dollar Store at Lewiston on Highway 14 sold from one investment firm to another for $1,230,000. Also, the Pizza Hut property on Highway 61 sold, and I believe there were investment people involved there as well. That sale was $875,000. So I just share some of these sales with you to show you the value of real estate in Winona. We had 47 rural land sales in 2017. That's 6 more than 2016. It was a mix in the 47. I call it something for everyone, and I'll just mention a few of them here. There were 12 sales that had less than 30 acres, and over the years, when we had land sales, we try to be 25 to 30 acres and above. 17, we had so many on the small end, and we're getting so many questions that we started logging those as well so we could have the information ready available for parties that were inquiring. So we had 12 of the sales that were less than 30 acres. We had 12 that had land and buildings, and those are interesting because they're always hard to make comparisons between them, but we still log them. We had 11 that were mixed topography, and there were multiple uses going on in the parcels. There were 2 of them that were tax exchanges, but they were done at market rates, so that was helpful. 2 of them that appear to be commercial for the future, pretty likely. We had 7 largely tillable land sales, no buildings. And then we had 9 that were woods and pasture with no buildings. So if we looked at the 9 woods and pasture sales, they range from 21 to 195 acres. The prices range from $24.41 to $46.05. And many of these presently our county value is $23.5. So it would be, some indication that the assessor will probably be looking at some of these sales pretty closely. Some of the higher sales, however, were for future home sites, and that will probably put them in a little bit of a different use. Generally, the smaller the acreage, the higher the price per acre. These are identified in the lighter blue coloring on the spreadsheet that's included in the agenda. The 7 tillable land sales range from 20 to 140 acres. And again, we had smaller parcels. Typically, our land sales for tillable land are 120 acres and more. Here we had 140 for the largest. The prices range from $5,000 an acre to $81.35. It appears that location and quality probably were reflected in the prices. So at year end, generally sales were higher than they were at the start of 17. It was also the pattern in the states around us. In the fall, it was deemed that Wisconsin was up 6% in sales, Iowa 1 to 3%, and at year end they were leaning towards the 3% more heavily. And then in other parts of Minnesota, at least 1%, but that was earlier in the year. I think when the sales at year end are looked at, they're going to be up a little more than that. So that was a little bit of an overview on how we were comparing on a limited number of sales that we had with our neighbors. All right, 2017, the end of the year, a couple of other things and some good news for the commissioners in just a minute. Foreclosures are at a 10-year low. We had 24. It says 25 in the packet, and that was our initial number. But one of those, for some technicalities, legal technicalities, had to be redone, so actually it's 24. The pending are at 42, which is down from 49 a year ago. And a year ago we had 37 foreclosures, so 24 is certainly a drop in the right direction. Our total recordings are down slightly when you look at the information that was presented. And that's because of some new laws that we worked for in Minnesota that now let one recording handle multiple tasks or maybe multiple transactions. When we take the total of the transactions, we actually ended up with additional revenue, and with the 4% increase in sales, some additional revenue, and at year end we were 15,000 above budget. We earlier I had been in contact with Ken and Pat both to let them know that the end of the year was looking pretty positive, but we had a couple of times recently, not the last 2 years, but some prior years where during the holidays things really slowed down. And if that were to have happened, then that 15 largely would have gone away. That was not the case. We had probably one of the most active year ends that we've had. So what's the outlook for 2018? Well, expectations are from at least a half a dozen realtors that I talked to that we're going to be somewhat similar to 2017. But each person in the same sentence cautions, saying that the inventory of homes is going to impact the number of sales. There are buyers, we know that. We still have people coming in asking if we're aware of any properties for sale at the county. And if they've moved here from a large metro area, they have some background to ask that question, because in some parts of the United States, sales are reported to the county. If you're putting your property up for sale, you do report it to the county, so then the county has a listing or contacts that they can provide. That's not the case here, but people are very, very movable in transit today, so they find out or work through one system in one location. They then feel at least comfortable coming in and asking questions. In 2017, the realtors went door to door in certain parts of the county, and particularly in the city of Winona, to talk with property owners about the potential to sell. They did that after they did many mailings and after they were spending several evenings making calls. That effort paid off, and that's how some of the additional homes that were sold in 17 became available. The parties that sold them, some of them actually stayed here but just moved into a different home. Some of them in the townhomes, and some just wanted to move to a different home, and they were able to accommodate them. It looks like if the success of 2017 is going to continue in 2018, I think the realtors are going to be again very, very active. So there's a lot going on from a lot of directions. We're getting a lot of questions, a lot more than I think that we've had in recent years. In a newspaper article about a week ago, the article stated that Rochester was the third most difficult city in the United States to buy a home. There's limited inventory, and the price for many people on the homes that are available is out of reach. The city of Winona, through the housing committee that has been working for the last year, has made some recommendations to the city council. They're being presented this month, and then following that, we're going to have one of the lead people from the city come to the county and update us. And I did serve on the housing committee. I was pleased to do that. And one of the things that they are looking at, and they are also doing this in Rochester and Olmsted County, is finding an outside agency to take over ownership of land and simply sell homes. And by selling the homes, they can save the cost of buying the land each time a home is built. And there seems to be a lot of interest and some appeal in that, so that may be one of the outcomes of that committee. I was looking around to see if Dan Mateka was still here because he sat on the committee, and I was going to see if he wanted to add anything, but I know he had some other appointments. All right, well, there's an update for you, and I appreciate it. I know you've had a long morning. We're getting a lot of requests for updates, and I am going to talk to a number of organizations that are interested, so I'm glad about that, too.
Good. Thank you, Bob.
So Bob, one of the statistics you'll have to keep here, looking at where you're listing, woods and everything, is you'll have to work with the DNR and find out what's the largest antler deer taken off that property. I get solicitations about once a month, a postcard in the mail, looking, are you looking to sell, or are you looking to buy? And they usually have a picture of a great big buck on the front of the thing. That seems to drive price.
The DNR was very active this past year. They did some acquisitions, and Fish and Wildlife did as well. And they are continuing to work with some property owners, targeting some areas that are within boundaries of designated areas that they're going to be working in.
I just know when I need to sell, when I want to sell, I'll put the game cameras up and capture those big critters. Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
I think that takes care of all of our business today, except committee reports. Commissioner Kavesi?
Yeah, I just wanted an announcement for the Primary Prevention Project. They're actually having a celebration of their 10-year anniversary, and this is a coalition project that's been working for 10 years to address sexual and gender violence. The anniversary celebration is actually next Tuesday, the 16th at noon here in the board meeting, and they're also going to focus on their two co-founders, being Joe Morse and Sue Rurich. Excuse me. The other piece is that I attended the initial meeting of a housing task force, which is focusing on two areas, need for transitional housing and also housing below market resources. So that's kind of what they've defined as their focus right now. We also had a nice update on the Common Ground property. They call it a halfway house. They actually have 16 male participants living in the house right now. So that, and they gave some other details. And a third concern kind of is just a general concern about our own public health. When we have long meetings, it seems like, and I know Commissioner Ward and I have discussed this in the past, the possibility of us having a 2-minute period to stand and stretch and do whatever for our boards and committees. Sitting is the new smoking, and we certainly don't want to fall into that trap of sitting too much. So just for further consideration, I don't know if it needs board discussion or whatever, or if the chair can take that upon her discretion. Just a comment.
Thank you. We can just eliminate the chairs and have a standing meeting. They're known to be shorter. They're known to be shorter. Just one thing that I got in the mail just the other day, Heather Bandine from the Association of Minnesota Counties they're really putting a push in Minnesota for the census. The 2020 census, and I know Bob Bamanek last time worked very hard to make sure it's critical because, Minnesota's kind of in the crosshairs of this census because we may lose congressional representation. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's yet to be determined, but it is important that we have a strong focus on getting the right count for census. So I'm not sure. This is a training. It's a free training that's in Rochester on January 24th.
I've been sending everything to Bob.
Okay.
So he's kind of.
I am registered for training in the city of Winona. Told me that they were registered people there.
Good.
Okay.
It's largely on getting people out. We've got some other technical sessions coming up, and I'm going to have ranking of one of the technical ones.
Okay.
So, and we have been working on them for several months on some boundary concerns, and the annexation discussion today really hits home. When those pieces are done, they need to be recorded. There's a lot that goes on here that plays into, what boundary the property is in. We found a couple of them that haven't been recorded, and it's making a difference.
And I think there was a headline a couple of days ago that actually Wisconsin is losing. There's more of an out migration in Wisconsin, but Minnesota is maintaining our overall numbers. Pardon me?
We're gaining in percent.
We're actually gaining, so that's a good thing.
After losing for a number of years.
Yeah, we need to be on
Everybody in Illinois has to have a place to go.
Yeah.
They're migrating out of there like crazy.
Summer houses don't.
One question. Last time for the census, did the board formally approve Bob as the point? Or was it just kind of a...
I thought we took action.
But we've just been going on as we had before, so... And Bob's been gracious enough to, take on those duties, but I didn't know if he needed formal recognition or not.
In 2010, we did.
We made formal.
The census was not getting all of the publicity our county is short on numbers compared to where we were 10 years ago. And I've already talked with a number of people trying to make up the number that we're short. It's just, I'm not sure it's out there.
Okay.
Student population's down.
Yeah, the technical and the colleges are less and stuff.
And the state, what Commissioner Jacobs said, that was that's the state demographer that's making that prediction. So it is reflecting pretty favorably on us. There's a state demographer 8 years ago in 2010 that said Winona County was going to drop.
Yes.
And I knew that we could beat that is because they never finished the census year 2000.
Right.
But we more than finished it in 2010. We spent
You spent a lot of.
significant numbers of dollars. So I'm not sure where else we have to go to try to pick up people.
So maybe we should entertain putting a motion to nominate
that'd be a
or
good
put
idea.
Bob as a head, and maybe we create a census committee of some type, to catch all the population? Okay.
We'll talk to Bob and we'll,
Come up
Maureen,
with-
and we'll figure out what we did before and see how it fits and so forth.
Okay. All right. With that, being no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh,
Motion made by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Kavesi to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. We're adjourned.